We're back on the Roadster. Body's off. We had 5 guys help, so everyone lifted with their legs. No backs were injured in this one. But we need to get this rear end in that there frame. And there are a few modifications that need to be done. First off, the rear leaf spring. This is a straight leaf spring. And what I mean by straight is there is no curve to this. And a 32 rear cross member, they are designed for a curved leaf spring. So now that we don't have that, we need to kind of do a bit of modification. So there's plenty of different ways you could do this. You could replace the rear cross member and put like a 40 Ford style cross member in, which is a very common thing to do with these. It allows you to have a straight leaf spring, a bit more variety. You can flatten it. You can do all sorts of stuff with it. I want to keep this one relatively stock. And what I'm going to do is actually modify the leaf spring slightly. You just have to kind of grind a little bit of it. I know maybe some of you are frowning upon that, but I have literally done so many different modifications to leaf springs and never had an issue. There's probably tons of guys out there that may say yes, and that's totally fine. But this is just kind of the way I'm going to try and do this. And, you know, I'm very confident that it'll be just as safe as it was before. So we're going to shape the rear leaf spring by grinding some little bevels to allocate for the 2 little kick-ups that go right in here. If Ben kind of shoots over, you can kind of see the shape of it right here. So this comes in, then it shapes kind of this way, and then that. So it's a very small amount that you have to just take out of the side of each leaf spring. And then you want to obviously make sure that you bevel them properly, that it's nice and rounded, radius the edges. You don't want any sharp kind of points or contact and anything like that. Once that's done, then we can start to get some measurements. I'm going to stick this 36 gearbox that I have up on the shelf in because it has the joint on it, so I know exact measurements to try and get the drive shaft set in the right spot. Then we can shorten the torque tube. Then we can do the rear radius rods. And then what we're going to do is remove these wide 5 drums and backing plates. We're going to put on a set of 39 backing plates, which look, this is a front one, but they look something like that. And yeah, so that right there says Ford right front, but the rear ones have the little cable for the handbrake. And what we're going to do is actually put these onto there so that we can run our juice brakes. And then, thank you very much, Ben. He gave us, where we're able to get a good set of brand new rear drums for running a set of wide 5 or 40 Ford style wheels, which I haven't quite decided on. But so we kind of, hopefully in this video, I can kind of show you in detail everything to be able to get this 36 rear end in that 32 chassis mounted up to the gearbox, and then we can kind of start to work off that. Once that's done, tires can go on the back. We can get a profile, we can throw the body back on, we can figure out our wheel well, making sure everything's going to line up for the body. Then I'd like to really try and get the pedal assembly set up. I don't have a right-hand drive stock 32 pedals, unfortunately. If anyone out there does, it would be greatly appreciated. Maybe hit us up, link in the comments or something. If not, I have a few different pedal assemblies that I'm happy to modify to make work. Once that's in, then we can work on our front end. That's going to be kind of a different story, maybe a different video. We're just going to see how far we get in this one now. So first things first, we are going to get some measurements down and yeah, start to get this thing kind of modified in order to fit in there. right, so what we need to do, take off these old U-bolts, try and press these studs out. I reckon they're going to be pretty seized in there. But then what we're going to do is just keep all this clamped together. We're going to measure out our little beveled bit that we need to grind out, and then we'll put this on the table and yeah, lay it out. So let's get this removed. Well, there's no surprise here that we have the shackle kind of stud or bolt that goes through. That's obviously seized in here. The old dog bones, they're seized in there as well. So we got a bit of penetrating fluid on those as well. We got the A-spring here, same deal. We need to get these pressed out. So just probably put a little bit of heat on them as well. I got this Force Black Magic. This stuff's deadly. I'll let it sit for a little bit. Probably should have done it yesterday and let it sit overnight. The longer this stuff sits in there, obviously, the better it's gonna work. So we're gonna play around with these. I might, while I'm waiting, pull the backing plates and these hubs off, and then, yeah, make it a little bit lighter, easier to move around. So we'll do that now. All right, so we got both backing plates and hubs off each side. And now we are currently working on the leaf spring. So I need to get these out and replace them with some brand new ones that I got. So this whole thing needs to come out. So I just ran out of oxygen for the oxy. So I'm just gonna try using the air hammer, see if I can get this through. Otherwise, I'll run into town, get another bottle of oxygen, set up the oxy, and hopefully we can get these things warmed up and punched out. All right, so I gave it a crack, ran in, got a fresh bottle of oxygen. So now we're going to heat these up and then try and hit them through that way. All right, so with a little bit of heat persuasion, we were able to get out the old leaf spring mounts. Just making sure they're not too hot. So that was the sleeve that sits in there. And then, you know, it was kind of encapsulated. And then it has the pin that goes through. So these new ones I got, same deal. It's got the steel outer casing. And it's like a kind of a press fit. So these would go in. These are still nice and warm. So I'm actually going to put these in and then let these cool down. So I've just put this one in. Preferably using a press, and kind of pressing these in would work. What I found was a 1/2-inch socket, fits over perfectly, and it's just under the outside diameter of this sleeve. So I can just tap this down with the hammer, get it centered, similar to this one. And then once we can do that, we'll move on to this side. We'll punch these guys out, do the same on here, and then we'll have a brand new shackle set up. So then we can start modifying this leaf spring. Perfect. All right, so same deal. We got 2 on these side that we need to get out. So we'll just make a little bit of room here. We'll grab our punch and we'll try and drive these ones out. They may come into, they may hit the back of the casting here. So if so, I can just trim it with the grinder and we can keep punching it out. Okay, so we have our new bushings pressed in. And what we're going to do is actually just keep this together. Well, I'm going to try it and see how it works because I like to try and put the whole thing out, but I will probably have to separate these and we still have to add a couple. But for mock-up purposes, this should be enough leaves. And so what we need to do is just bevel a little bit out. And what I'm going to show you here is a little photo. And if you can see that, we have 8 inches, so 4 inches from center on each side. And in the center of that needs to be 1 inch and 15/16 or 50 mil basically, that we need to kind of bevel in order to fit this little kick up right here. So or not kick up, sorry, just where it kind of bends in right there. So the straight bit's fine, it's just this little bit right here that we need to kind of allocate for. So what we're going to do is lay this out on here. So we're going to do a center line, go out 4 inches on each side, 1 inch and 15/16. And what I'm going to use, just use a Posca marker, wipe it on the top so I can scribe exactly where it is. And I'll just make a little shape and then we can grind all these to fit. So I may actually, probably don't need to actually do that in a scribe. What I might do is just run a center line here. And then we'll go out 4 inches and that way 8 inches. So I found this photo on the ham, and you know, that's, if you guys aren't familiar with that form, it's just literally the Bible as far as hot rodding goes. There's just a wealth of knowledge on there, incredible guys that just are really helpful and love to share their tips and tricks and builds and everything. So this is from on there. And all right, so now we need to do 1 inch and 15/16, which is 50 mil. Shh. It's my mother texting me. She's very excited to come to Australia in a couple weeks. These are my garbage veneer calipers as well, in case anyone's wondering, but they make very good use of doing stuff like this. But They didn't work that well, and I had a nice pair, so I sacrificed them. All right, so now what we need to do is kind of just try and do like an even bevel on each one. And what I'm thinking, I don't actually know how far we have to go with this, so I might just use a template. It needs to be probably not crazy tight, but I don't know if that would work. I don't reckon that's going to be enough. Need something a bit bigger. Nah. What I might do is just go 30 mil each side. I could do a cardboard template. That'd probably be the best way to do this. So what I'm going to do is make a little line there and there. There. So that's our 60 mil. So what we're going to do is kind of cut that, sort of kind of bevel that edge. But what I might do is I might actually have to do each one singular and then line them all up so they fit properly. Or I can grab my square that goes straight down. Okay, so what we need to do is take this out, making sure that it measures that distance. So we're going to suit up, put our mask on. I'm going to try and probably, I don't know the best way to grind this. Probably that way, I reckon. Just sit there and then I can kind of see on the edge out where I'm traveling to. What I might do as well, I'll run a square off the center one, 50 mil. So now we got a bottom reference, a top reference, and what we need to do is take this meat out of here. So I reckon I might actually get the old school grinding stone out, see if that'll work. We got a couple 40 grit flap discs, an 80 grit, and what I'll do is once this actually fits, I'll separate these all and we will go and clean up all the edges and actually bevel all these over so there's no hard edges or anything like that. They're all clean, and then this should essentially fit in. Hope. So I'm going to clamp it down. Once it's clamped into place, then we can work on getting it ground out. Something like that. Okay, that was a fair bit of grinding, but it worked, I think. I haven't actually tested it yet, but I'm gonna try now. So this is kind of, if you look, you can kind of see what we've done. So it sort of comes down, it falls, and then just before it actually hits the center, it kind of comes up. So just the way I was looking at it, it seems to, yeah, kind of look like it's the right angle. I would definitely suggest, you know, if you wanted to use a cardboard template, it would definitely help. Also separating these and then using your template and kind of tracing it out evenly for each one, that would work too. And you know, for those guys who might not be comfortable grinding their leaf spring, that's totally like acceptable. Like if you don't want to do it, I'm not saying it's the best thing to do or the worst thing to do. It's just purely what I'm, you know, what I've tried to do. And you know, I know a lot of people that have done it and never had any issues, and we're not really taking that much off of them anyways. So what we're going to try and do is see if this will actually fit. So if we spin around, we have our rear end there, our cross member. So you can kind of see again, it sort of matches. Like you could almost make that full shape, but you don't actually need this full curve in here because of the width is actually the same as there. So you can leave kind of that flat bit if you need to. So I'm just going to put you on the tripod quickly. All right, got you on there. So let's just see. Oh. Wow, that actually worked. What I might do too is just throw like a measurement from the back of the frame rail to the end of the leaf spring, just make sure it's square, but that's sitting right where I want it to. Anything I could maybe take like a tiny bit more out, just so the hole's centered. It's a slightly forward, but I'm digging that. That's awesome. So what I'll do is I'll see if I got a old pin. We'll stick that in and then see how we're playing with it, but that's great. Okay, so what we're gonna try and do is just bolt it in roughly and see how it comes up with. Got a mismatch of parts until my new U-bolts and stuff come, but we'll be able to get something here and mocked up. I reckon there's two different style clippers or U-bolt plates. These ones are the shallow ones. They're actually made for a leaf spring, or they're all from my old Model A. But because this leaf spring pack is only 5, is it 5 or 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It might be a bit too shallow, so I might have to put a packer in there, but just for peace of mind, we can try it. A couple little spacers, they're just gonna go right underneath the U-bolt plates, and that should give me enough to kind of nip them up, at least so it's relatively tight. So, yeah, all right. So I need to try and get those in and bolted in. The only thing about these new U-bolts is they don't have the little locating pin to kind of set them in there. So I do have an old set. I'm probably going to use them, to be honest. Or maybe I can just weld something on them just so they grab. Okay, and then underneath. So I think once I separate it and bevel those edges, they'll fit really nice. It's fitting really well, but it's just a little bit tight, which is probably not a bad thing because it looks like it's dead even on both sides. So, but that's all it is. So now, like, we kind of have our, you know, we're kind of at that point where what we could do is actually what we should do. I should remove the torque tube now. I'll pull it out from the frame and I'll take this out, slide it out. We'll remove the torque tube and the radius rods. Actually no, radius rods gotta stay. I might just try and, how are we gonna do this? Radius rods are part of the spring mount, but we need to shorten those in order for everything to fit. Or do we? No, we definitely do. Okay, this might be a bit tricky. I'm gonna scratch my head and figure out what to do here. All right, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna remove this bolt. We're gonna leave the radius rods there. And then we are going to take the speedo drive out, the clip. We're gonna take all those bolts off the end of the torque tube. We're gonna slide this off. From memory, I think this is a 2-piece drop shaft, but I could be wrong. But we'll only know. Many of you already know right now watching this, but I forget if this one is or not. So I'm gonna pull it off and see. And then we're gonna try and get it back in. But I need to get this torque tube off so we know where it's gonna sit. Is that going? Okay, so torque tube's off. Unfortunately, when this was stored, it must have sat up like that against someone's house, which is what everyone does, and probably forgot to put a cover over the top. So you can see all the rust, and it's led right down into that pinion bearing, which probably isn't the best thing to see. I would have liked to have opened it up and saw some nice clean stuff, but that's all right. We do have to rebuild this thing, so I'm okay with that. Yeah, so I kind of need to trim this bad Sally, and then once that's, or disconnect it, once that's disconnected, then we can put this back in and we'll see where it's gonna sit. Look, there's Mark. Okay, this drive shaft has a spline on this end, and then this kind of, that's the, you got your male spline, that the output shaft from the pinion, and then you got your drive shaft that actually slides onto these splines, and then there's this pin here, and this pin goes through and kind of holds everything together. So I'm just going to grind the kind of mushroomed end of where it's been hammered over, and take that off, and then we're going to drive this pin through so we can remove this drive shaft. I'm going to grab me center punch. I'm going to try and just, I want to use a little pneumatic hammer because it, not that it even does much, but I just want to do it purely just to kind of shake everything up. I feel like the vibration of it will help like loosen everything. But what I'm doing is I want it to hit in one area. So I'm gonna take a little drill bit Taylor, actually let's use that guy. I'm gonna take a 4mm drill bit, and then I have that, it's tapered, but this thing bounces around. So if it doesn't have like a hole where it's gonna sit, it's gonna go everywhere. So, which means you'd probably ping the edge of it and then you'll never get it out. So I'm gonna pre-drill a tiny little hole. Makita, give us a new drill. Wow, that is one dull bit. Let's go this way. I reckon this is tapered. I think it's still got a taper on it. So it must be flanged, and then when you put the pin through, and then it mushrooms it so it doesn't move. So I think, no. So what I think I need to do is actually try and drill the head off a little bit more. It's a bit too big, that one. Kind of went off center a bit. Ooh, I need to use it one size smaller. There it is. So what they've done is it's actually tapered on both sides. So this would have been drilled, tapered, pin goes through, pressed on both sides, mushrooms out, so it can obviously never come out until now. That's probably the first time it's ever been out since 1936 when it was assembled. Maybe Henry Ford actually did that one.
I think he did.
Probably not. Close the door, it stinks. Far out.
Smelly dog, what are you doing?
All he does is f***ing eat and shit, that guy. If I had a brass one of these, I'd be using it, everybody. Boom! Look at that. I wonder what's in there. Oh. Oh. So there's a fair bit of rust in these things, but that's all right. Josh. Josh. Everyone? It's Josh. Everyone? He's a comedian. He's a comedian. All right. Well, the good thing is that all came apart pretty dang smoothly. And the good thing is that actually looks like it's in quite good shape, which is awesome. Okay.
Well, I saw the towers fall while I was watching my TV. I cursed the bastards that done it, joined up with the Marines. We killed more than a few, some of them got away. We're still there more than 10 years later. Is it worth it? I can't say. But all things considered, when the day is done, well, I'm not laying in section 60 down in Arlington.
Careful, you guys. I'll just film, mate. I'm the safety officer. Maybe I should film.
All right, Josh, get on there.
Josh is so scared. Oh, Josh, don't want to injure myself.
Okay, step on that. And watch your face with that. Just like lean that way.
Okay, great. This is epic. I'm doing it. Cool. I don't think I'm heavy enough.
Can you lift up that end, Ben?
Ready?
Okay, it needs to go like, hold on.
That's bloody close, isn't it? Oh, yeah.
Okay, go again. Yeah.
In more, come on.
I reckon one more tug.
Tug. Tugger. Oh, that's pulling it up, but.
Yeah, that's all right. Then you gotta go down.
Ready? Yep, go. Let go or what?
No. Don't do anything. You guys all right?
Yep. I'm gonna wait on it.
Can you go down a little bit more? It's like
Which way do you need to come?
I need you to come up a bit more, Ben.
Yeah.
Yep. A little bit more. A little bit more.
What do I do?
Push down, Josh. Yep.
What's your fingers at?
Yeah. Okay. All right, you guys just watched something that was pure dangerous, but it worked. Took 3 of us to do it, where I could have just removed it all and pulled all the leaf springs apart. But I didn't want to do that yet because I like the pack. I like where everything's trimmed. Everything kind of fits properly. So we just needed to manipulate it with some straps and a bit of muscle, and we were able to get that leaf, the shackles onto the spring and the radius arm where it mounts here. So unfortunately, I got these in a kit. These press in. I have nice ones pressed into the leaf spring. They went in really nicely. And these ones press into the perch on the radius arm. Unfortunately, when I pressed it in, I used a socket and was trying to like have a stop. And what happened was this stayed and this came out, and it actually mushroomed like crazy. Like it fully went on inside of itself and out. But I couldn't see that with the little kind of piece I made in order to press these in. So that didn't work, and it took me 2 hours to get it out, which really sucked. And you can't really buy those individually, unfortunately. So I had to buy a whole nother shackle kit for the back. So I'll have spares in case anyone does what I do. I'll have 3 to be exact. So, you know, just for peace of mind. But that's okay. What I've used is a bit of ready rod. It goes through, and I've used 2 nuts inside, and they actually just fit in there with like a slight bit of clearance, so it still kind of is centering everything. Anyways, now that we have the kind of leaf springs mounted, the 36 rear end is now in. We still have the radius arms because they are technically part of the spring. What I need to do is obviously shorten these. And so next step, I need to remove this transmission. I will put this 36 transmission in because we have the uni joint with the same splines that will match up to that. So once that's in, then again, similar to the race car, when we're shortening the torque tube, we need to find the distances between everything to make sure it all fits properly. Once we have that fitted, then it's a matter of doing some measurements and trimming the torque tube and the inside drive shaft. Now, the torque tube itself, luckily, these ones are actually straight, kind of from here down. So I'm probably not gonna touch any of this bit. I'm gonna leave this here. What I will do is I'm gonna run a scribe line from center, and I'm gonna run a line all the way to center of this bolt so that we know that this always comes in. I've been caught before when I've actually welded it, ones in before, and I kind of forgot about that being on and tacked it all in, held it there, and it was kind of off to like 2 o'clock. So you gotta make sure that that line stays the same the whole way through. Once that's scribed, then we will actually take this rear section kind of in this area. I'll probably try and keep it as close to this as I can, and we will put it in the cold saw so we know that it's jigged up properly and it's going to cut really square. We will cut along here, and then we will take this, we'll take the piece that we need, like, you know, the measurement that we are trying to lose in order to shorten this. We'll take that out, and then we can use the coupler on the back of it, making sure that that'll fit. And as well, we need to do the same with this. Luckily, this has the same thing. It is straight from here to here. So we can take a piece out of here, and then we can put this back together and weld it. And what I'll probably end up doing with this as well is I'll cut this, and internally I might make a little sleeve, and I might drill through 4 bits of this, and then I'll just do a little rosette weld just to kind of have a little bit more strength than just butt welding this piece together. So what I'm going to do is wire wheel this, clean it right up. I may even actually just let these soak a little bit with some oil in there and just try and clean them out as best as I can. Even if I could get like a big wire brush down there with taped on something just to try and clean it out, because there is a fair bit of scale in there. And then that's great. So the only thing that you have to worry about when you do these ones is you do want to make that measurement that you saw me do from the face of this cup to kind of the top of this. So it's 1.5 mil, I know is exactly where that sits stock. And you want to make sure that everything goes back to the same proportions, because you need to make sure that the speedo drive and your little clip go on in the same position, and you want this to lock down in the groove that is in this here. So this will slide down, locking your speedo drive in. Inside there is a bearing in here that we will remove and we need to replace because it is totally cactus. It's probably going to be a pain in the ass to actually get out, but a long pipe from the other side, hit it with a hammer, you'll be able to get it out. So we're going to just clean everything up, and then we'll get it onto the table. We'll do some measurements, swap out the transmission, and we will continue. Let's do it. Okay, so we got the drive shaft. Just a little bit of wax and grease remover. Get a little bit of the scale off. It's not that bad, actually. It's probably a little bit worse just at the top, but that's okay. God, there's a lot of grinding soot. Yeah, we'll get the wire wheel on that. So this is a little bit different style, you know, than your solid shaft that you would have seen that kind of goes all the way through in your Model A and than that, but the V8 ones kind of started to go to this hollow tubing. All right, what I'm gonna do is get my gear on, and then we're just gonna wire wheel all this, and then we'll grab the other bit, we'll clean them all out, and we'll start doing some measurements.
We're still there more than 10 years later. Is it worth it? I can't say. But all things considered, when the day is done, well, I'm not laying in section 60 down in Arlington. I haven't had a job or a home since I come back from the war. I was doing all right there for a while. Must have had one too many tours. Now I got drug addiction and that PTSD. Saddam is dead, but we never did find those WMD.
All right, so we got it all wire wheeled now. There's a little bit of pitting and stuff on this side, kind of coming down into here a little bit, but I think where the bearing sits is actually, it's okay. And the splines are nice and clean. So I'm just gonna use a little bit of that Galmet that I've mentioned before. It's just that rust converter and sealer. I'm just gonna seal this a bit. And then we'll do the inside. And then we'll start to get some measurements, get the transmission in.
Lots of us warriors with faces missing at the price of liberty. I'm not ready to run no marathon or to climb McKinley. Just being a mother to both of my children, that's good enough for me. But all things considered, when the day is done, well, I'm not laying in section 60 down in Arlington.
All right, so what we're gonna do now, we're gonna lift this up, pull that transmission off. We are going to slide this 36 one on. I'm going to pull the back mount off this, and once that's off, then we can stick it in. And we got our uni joint. We can start doing some measurements, get this drop shaft cut up. So we'll make some room.
I lost the bottom half of both of my legs to an IED. Lots of us warriors with faces missing at the price of liberty. I'm not ready to run no marathon or to climb McKinley. Just being a mother to both of my children, that's good enough for me. But all things considered, when the day is done, well, I'm not laying in
Transmission is off. Motor is floating. Old one, new one. This is the 32 rear mount that fixes straight to the back of the transmission, and then your four bolts bolt straight in to the K-member itself. So this is the old one. This is the mount that we just pulled off. So what we're going to do is transfer this onto here, and then we'll bolt this whole setup on there and slide it back in.
When the day is done, well, I'm not laying in section 60 down in Arlington.
So prior to putting this on, I just thought of something. This is obviously a box from home, so different pedal setup, left-hand drive to right-hand drive. So we got our throw-out bearing here, and what I need to do is pull this pin out and put the right-hand drive pin on where it's actually going to protrude out on the right-hand side for our clutch. I want to do this now so that I don't have to take a transmission off for the third time. Because once this is in, like, I can leave this in until we set up pedals, steering box, all the rest. So unfortunately too, this is another thing. I'll actually explain this when I put it in, but it has to do with the starter, steering box, and pedals for a right-hand drive car. There's a whole lot going on one side, which would be epic to like make some sort of conversion where I could swap and put the starter over onto the left-hand side in order to have a bit more clearance for the steering box and the pedal assembly. But for now, I'm going to pull this pin out. If you guys aren't familiar with it, it is quite easy. There's a little pin right here. So you just pull the spring off, pull your throw-out bearing out, pull that little pin, you want to punch that up, and then you can kind of grab on this, slide this pin straight out, and install the right-hand drive style one. As mentioned, so we've pulled the throw-out bearing off, removed our spring just prior to doing that, and then this is the pin. So the pin needs to be driven out this way, but unfortunately there's no way of actually being able to get it out. So sometimes it's a bit tricky to get these things out. If the gearbox was empty, your lower main shaft that holds your gear set is straight down there, and what you can do is get a long pin that goes all the way through. You can line that up and it'll actually drive this out. It's very easy, but because our gear set and everything is in there, we're gonna have to get a bit creative with trying to get this out. So let's see what we can come up with. Luckily, that wasn't actually pressed in. It was just kind of slid in there and just had a little small tap on it. So I was able to just get a piece of vice grips and just pull it, and it came straight out, which was awesome. So now I need to pull this guy out. So there's your shaft. What I need to do is I have another one that I'm going to put in. It's got the hole in it so I can slide on the arm for my clutch. So that's got to come in this way. So I'll grab that now and then we will stick this in, making sure that everything is relatively clean. It's all nice still, which is great. Okay, I cannot find my other shaft that has the different end on it. So this is going in like this for now. So it will have to be removed again, but that's okay. Testing. All right, gearbox is fitted. So now we're just gonna drop this straight back into place.
I got my ride home through Dover Air Force Base. Got a final salute from an honor guard. They carried me in a flag-draped case.
All right, so here's the outer torque tube. We've put it down on the table. It's sitting level. We do know that this is sitting level as well, or horizontally. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm just gonna put you down here so you can kind of see. I'm gonna use this surface gauge. This is gonna slide along the table. And what I'm gonna do is spin this around, and I'll just show you, just for an example. I'm gonna go find center of this, and then I'm gonna run a line all the way down here so that I know when I cut this in half and I go to take the piece that we need to remove out, then they will line back up on that line and everything will be in line. So this will still match up to the torque tube. This will still sit directly down the bottom for the ends of the radius rod to attach to. So what we'll do is kind of hold you like, now I'll put you on this side, then you can see. A little bump on the table. I just ran the grinder and sander over the top of the fab table just to take any little burrs off so that this wouldn't catch. So there's our center, right there. So now if I run this, so now we know that when we go to cut that section out, this will butt back up to the exact same position, which is exactly what we want. So this is what we're trying to achieve. So we know that the drive shaft itself has the little, it slides on to here, and then there's a pin that goes through right here. And that's what holds it onto the yoke of the rear end. The front of the drive shaft, let's call it the input shaft of the torque tube, goes inside the transmission output shaft, or uni joint here. And if I stick my finger all the way up until it makes contact to the bolt that holds it in, it's 65 mil from the edge all the way inside. And I can use the vernier calipers and show you how I measured that. But you don't want it to be right pressed up against that. You need to allow a little bit of suspension travel for kind of coming in and out. What I've done is if I actually just hold it on the edge, that allows 15 mil of play inside there. So, you know, it has a little bit to move. And then we run it all the way down to the center of that hole, or edge of the hole, sorry, is 1260. So what we need to accomplish, make sure that the end of that to the thing here, so right now is 1700, and we need to go to 1260. So roughly around 400 and something. I can't do quick math like that. But all right, so what I'm gonna do is actually cut the torque tube first before the internal drive shaft, just to make sure that it's gonna fit properly, and then we can make sure that this is gonna line up exactly inside here to pop that clip on. There's multiple ways of measuring this, and I've kind of just done a couple different ones. I have the, if I can get it off. Okay, I have the coupler that obviously sits up against the torque tube. Then this gets bolted to the back of the transmission, and we have kind of the piece, the external piece that bolts like that. That goes like that, and it encapsulates it and lets it pivot on there. So what I've done is you could set this up on the table, run that square off the table, make sure the other side's, and then you can measure kind of from here, right on that line back. What I've done is, I know that there's a witness mark, so I've stuck it onto the back of the transmission like so, and then I can measure from here all the way to the back of the face of the rear end. So I'll measure it straight from the witness mark all the way back to here, and then what I can do is measure Mark's back. And then what I can do is measure where that's going to sit. So that witness mark is exactly the edge of this coupling. So I can put it on the end here. I can run it. So it says, pretty sure, so 1775 to the very edge. That's 13, I forget, I've already done this math. So I know that the difference I need to take out of this is 435 mil. So that's 425 mil, 35 mil. So this needs to be shortened that much. So now that we've done that scribe line, we're going to take that difference out, pull this back in, weld it, stick it in, job done, go fast. All right, lighting's in here. This is Liam's shop from across the street. And he's got cold saw, and this thing cuts true, which is amazing. So what we're gonna end up doing is, I need a little bit of, it's kind of as close as I can get before it starts to become unsquare. So that's all right, because I could trim it closer back here and take it out, but I want to cut it here, bring this forward, and when they meet in the center, I'll have something that I can use, like a piece of angle, to kind of clamp it all together to make sure it still sits true. So realistically,
Tonight I'm feeling mean, I'm feeling mean. Tonight I'm feeling mean, I'm feeling mean. Tonight I'm feeling mean.
all right, so there's one end, and then what we're gonna do is measure 435 mil.
I'm feeling mean. Tonight I'm gonna pick myself a fight. If some deserving dirtbag, a black eye.
So that's how much we are shortening it. All right, let's go back over and just loosely mock it up, see how close we are. Okay, so here we go. There's our piece that we've removed. And then, I mean, the funny thing is, I'll explain something. There's a weld seam on this, right here. Goes all the way down. So that whole thing of explaining that scribe line, honestly, probably not that necessary. That maybe now we have 2 points of reference rather than just one. So now I know where the weld line's up and our line. So yeah, I did that on purpose. I meant to do that. So what we're gonna do now is just hold this in, see how close we are in place. Fingers crossed we've kind of nailed it. We may have not. I'm just gonna wire wheel the face of this. So I've just loosely bolted those in. I may actually just nip them up a little bit. And just want to make sure the scribe line's on the bottom of that. Yep. Okay. So now we're going to take this guy. I'm not sure if this is going to fit. Like, I might have to play around with it a little bit. Oh yeah, that's the go right there. So if it comes back, clamps into place, we are laughing. I want to try and clean a little bit of this out, so I'm just going to try and get the wire wheel in there. May even make like a little plunger, something that I can stick down there and just kind of clean it a bit. And then we're going to pull that off, and we'll stick them on the table and get these welded in.
Tonight I'm feeling mean, I'm feeling mean. Tonight I'm feeling mean, I'm feeling mean. Tonight I'm feeling.
All right, so as you just saw, I kind of just used the flat wheel on the inside just to clean it. The wire wheel kind of worked just to try and get a bit of that slag that was, or not slag, sorry, just the kind of old grease and stuff that's been sitting in there. So what we can do now, I've beveled the edge, just put kind of like a little 45-degree chamfer on it without actually hitting the you know, I've brought it as close in without actually grinding material away to make sure that when this goes together, it still sits square and we have a nice little pocket in order to fill. So what I'm gonna do, I just have the little brown roll-lock wheel on there. These are really, really good. They take kind of your top material off without grinding too much off. So what I'm gonna use this for, I'm just gonna show you quickly. So I'm just gonna run around both sides just to get it really, really clean. We know that our inside is gonna be really clean as well, but I'll give it one more wipe through. And then we can kind of clamp all this together and start to tack it. So just put me safeties on and air protection. So we have it tacked in place, or not tacked in, sorry, clamped into place. We're gonna tack it now. We just used like a little straight edge. Everything's really, really clean and nice around it. We got our line, everything matches up. Although, looks like it's actually moved.
There's a heavy price to pay. Tonight I'm feeling mean, I'm feeling mean.
All right, so I just kind of like lifted, as you saw, the front of the motor forward. We slid the torque tube down, bolted it in with 3 bolts. And what I'm gonna do now is use our little coupling. And one thing I need to do is these need to be shortened as well. So there's our mounting point for the radius rods. So these will be shortened, and then I will kind of pie cut them to try and pull them in and make sure everything kind of sits where it's supposed to. But what I want to do is just mock everything up. If I can get these down. So that will bolt in there. We're just going to throw these in just to kind of hold everything together, visually see what it's going to look like. And then I will do the internal, the actual drive shaft itself, along with the radius rods. I just want to make sure I kind of have everything teed up and, you know, close to where it's going to be for ride height and stuff like that. And then I'll make sure it's all going to work. But virtually, you know, that's kind of what we're after. So that coupler bolts on. It's got the pivot. Everything's still in line using our scribe line and or the witness mark from where their weld was. So that worked out. All right, so we're gonna wrap it up there until our further episode where we will be doing shortening of the radius rods, internal drive shaft. And basically we can put on backing plates, drums, maybe even put it on instead of rims, figure out where everything's gonna go. So for mock-up purposes, this is excellent. I'm super happy with the way it looks and has turned out. We are gonna move into the front, so we'll get the front axle, hubs, everything on there as well, mock it all up. I think the rest of the small little parts that I need will arrive next week from over east. So yeah, and then once we've got that sorted and it's on wheels and it's rolling, then we can kind of figure out pedal assembly, steering box, where everything's going to go. We'll put the body back on and kind of rough out where everything is able to sit. And yeah, we'll kind of, you know, just keep ticking boxes where we can. So I think next week as well, I'll probably be a bit more on the race car for those who kind of want to see a bit more footage on that. I am racing it next month, kind of mid-month. So I need to get the gearbox in and rebuilt and stuck back in there. And then, yeah, it's gonna go through a fair few alterations. I'm just gonna maybe change out the wheel tire combo as well, just to see if it's a bit different for racing on a close track. So if anyone has, I'm running a set of 17-18 combo. So I have some 17-inch tires over there. They're pretty old, but they'll do. But I got some nice 18s that I want to run on the back. So if anyone knows or has a set of 18 by, I don't know, 600 or 650s, please let me know. It would be excellent to try and find a set so I can put it on the back, and at least I can put them on and trial the test and tune to see how the car will go a little bit better. And also, as you've noticed, I have the new 2.0, the new and improved Bennett's long sleeves. So if you guys are, it's kind of getting to that time. Summer's ending at the end of the month here, so if you want to jump into a long sleeve for those, you know, cold afternoons when you're having a nice beer, jump on. We do have them on our website, so there'll be a link in the description. So jump on there and grab one if you guys feel like it. Anyways, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and we will see you next week on another episode of Bennett's Customs. Thank you very much for watching, and all your support, all those positive comments really makes it very exciting.